Btec Tech Award in Health and Social Care, Year 11, Component 3. This is the final revision session and final notes for your exam. You will have done lots of revision, but the night before I want you to think through these following things. Read through the common obstacles people face and ways of overcoming them. For example, obstacles of quitting smoking, obstacles of dieting, losing weight, and think about ways in which you could encourage somebody to lose that weight, overcome those obstacles. Remind yourself of SMART targets. So SMART targets are what you should be setting your individual later in the paper. Any targets you set for your individual should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and you should consider the time that is given. You need to remind yourself of the difference between economic, environmental and cultural factors. There has been a lack of smokers so far in the real exam, so read up on strategies to help people quit smoking. There has been no personal hygiene questions so far. Why is hygiene important? What are the consequences of poor hygiene and how can you support someone with poor hygiene? So, it's the day of the exam. Hopefully you will have had a good night's sleep. Eat a breakfast, even if you don't normally do this. It will make a difference, even if you just have a banana. Have a glass of water. Read through the common obstacles for the last time. Try to relax. In the exam, try to apply your common sense. If you have an old man that wants to exercise, don't send him on a 5K run, for example, if he's not done exercising in a long while. Think about how you could start him off gradually. So we'll start with the first part of the exam, Section A. You'll be given a vocational scenario on the first page. You need to make sure that you bring two highlighters into the exam, green for positive and red for negative. You can make as many notes on that vocational scenario as you wish. Mind map any important factors, such as any environmental factors that affect your individual, any cultural factors, any economic factors. You might want to state how it might affect them. Does it affect them physically? Now, this is the most important piece of advice. So many students lose marks by not reading the questions properly. And I know every teacher says this to you every year, every exam. But on the health and social care papers, it usually asks you whether to focus on a physical, intellectual, emotional, or social question. So if it says explain two social factors that could have an effect on Daisy's life, you're not going to talk about how it affects her emotionally or how it's going to affect her physically, because you would lose marks. It could easily have been also explain two intellectual factors that could have a negative effect on Daisy's life. Look for the positives and the negatives as well. Pay attention to the pies and whether it is positive or negative. In the first part of the paper, lots of students get confused with economic, environmental and cultural factors, mainly economic and environmental. So double check you know the following. Anything that is to do with the economic factors will involve money, income, wealth or pensions. Think about how much money they have, the type of house they live in, for example, the jobs that they do, or perhaps they may be retired or unemployed. How will that impact them? Perhaps they've been made redundant or they've been fired. These aspects will all affect their economic outcomes. It will affect how much money they have. The next one is environmental factors. This is level of pollution, so noise and air pollution, for example. These have appeared in the exams lots. They do enjoy this question. It can also include housing conditions. So if you live in a house that is damp or has mold, or cramped, they could all be clumped under the environmental factors heading. Also the location in which someone lives. Do they live in the countryside or do they live in a city? Think about whether they live next to a busy road. What would the impacts of being next to a busy road be, perhaps? It could be they're affected by noise pollution, can't sleep at night, or perhaps even it's air pollution and that could impact their asthma. What state is their house in? Has it got damp or mold? How's that going to affect them if you've got someone that has got asthma? This is going to be has kind of a negative effect on their physical health and could make their asthma worse. And then there's cultural factors, which means religions and beliefs. So do they follow a religion? Does it impact their life in any way? Do they have a special diet? So only halal or kosher? Do they wear particular religious clothing? Do they have to pray throughout the day? You need to consider all these aspects. Do they go to church? Do they go to mosque? What's the benefits of going to mosque, meeting the chance to meet all different types of people, make new friends, to get to discuss their beliefs with other people who have a common goal. So try to consider the benefits of economic, environmental and cultural, as well as the disadvantages. We now move on to the second part of the exam paper. They will add more context now, so they'll tell you a little bit more about the individual, give you a little bit more depth about them. Again, anything positive, green, negative, red. You need to keep the highlighter theme going throughout the paper. They will give you some more questions on how things may impact your individual. They usually link to emotional aspects, but again, this could change. So read the question. What pies are they asking about? The next part of the exam will focus on lifestyle data. Please, please, please bring a ruler to the exam because it really will help you with accuracy. You will get some data on your individual and then you'll be expected to interpret it using the data measurements that they provide. Sometimes they may tell you what the BMI is, other times you may need to work it out. You will need to get some additional information about your individual. You will also get some additional information about your individual. So lifestyle factors, about how much they drink or how much they smoke. Read it carefully. Underline anything you need to. You could be asked about any of the following: pulse rate, blood pressure, peak flow or body mass index. So make sure you have revised all four. Understand what a low peak flow means or a high blood pressure means. So after you've looked at and interpreted lifestyle data, you'll be asked questions on it. Now, the first question in that section will focus on lifestyle data. It's going to ask you about their lifestyle choices that they've made, and you must only put the lifestyle choices here. Don't worry about, say for example, the other question is about blood pressure or peak flow. Don't put this here. Try to put the actual lifestyle data that you know. So how much they drink, how much they smoke, do they exercise, what's their diet like, do they take prescription drugs? Everything like that must go into the current physical health. So what do we know? His current physical health is, when we're looking at lifestyle data, is that he smokes 10 cigarettes a day or smokes 30 cigarettes a day, and he drinks 28 units a week. And what are the risks of this to his health? So what are the risks of drinking too much? What are the risks of smoking too much, taking prescription drugs? This must all go into the first section. And then you will get asked, like say, it could either be pulse rate, blood pressure, peak flow, or BMI, the other two questions. So they will vary depending on the actual exam paper. But lifestyle data should be to do with smoking, drinking, drugs, exercise and diet. And that will always be the first question. After you've answered your questions on lifestyle data, your BMI or pulse rate, and what the consequences of having high pulse rate or high BMI, you will then move on to section B. Section B is about designing a health and wellbeing improvement plan. There's an example up on the top right hand side of this PowerPoint where you can see that Damien wants to increase his energy levels, improve his sleeping patterns, etc., but he doesn't want to lose contact with his daughter or give up his old lifestyle choices. You see that Damien finds it difficult to maintain a good level of motivation, and he has a poor self-image since his divorce. So this section here, you'll be getting more information about your individual. Again, read it carefully, make notes, positives, negatives. Pay attention to what he does not want to do and make sure you consider this in his plan. So the fact that he doesn't want to give up his old lifestyle choices completely is you'll need to consider what lifestyle choices he's currently doing. Is he smoking, drinking, drugs, exercising? And you'll need to think about not cutting, so if he smokes 50 a day, he may want to reduce his smoking, but he may not want to give it up completely, and you can consider that when you are cutting down his smoking in the plan. Pay attention to other relevant information as it may become in use for the higher mark questions later on, and it could help you when trying to design a plan that would be most appropriate and person-centered. So person-centered means it revolves around your individual. You should take into consideration everything listed on this page. And you're really looking at ways, when he says what he wants to do, increasing his energy levels. How could you increase his energy levels? He wants to improve his sleeping patterns. How could you improve his sleeping patterns? You can get mindfulness naps before he goes to sleep, or reading a book before he goes to sleep, making sure he goes to bed at a reasonable time, wake up at a reasonable time. How could he have more money? Think about earlier information that you've got, that he might smoke, or he might drink, or he might have takeaways, and this could be costing him a lot, lots, and you could think about cutting those down and therefore saving him money that way. Really pay attention to the information before as well as the information that you've got in front of you. We now move on to the planning a health and well-being plan for your individual. And you need to recommend actions to improve the health of your individual. Remember, you must use SMART targets. Go back, look up what a SMART target is. Make sure you understand what a SMART target is, because if you set unrealistic targets, you won't get the marks. So like I said before, if you've got an overweight, obese male with a high blood pressure, you can't go and send him on a 5k run. Number one, okay, he's not fit enough, and number two, you could cause him to have a serious illness. You could cause him to have a heart attack. So seriously think about what you are setting your person. How can it be measured? So for example, he could start off doing 5 10-minute walks a week. And you've got a time associated with it. It's quite realistic and it's measurable, and then he can tick off if he's done that. And it's also achievable, and it's not something that you might think, oh, I really can't do that. 10 minutes is quite an attainable time. Just go out round the block and back again, and then you could gradually increase it. You could even have less, like 3 10-minute walks a week, and then gradually increase it to 15 minutes, but it's got to be a gradual increase. Try to use your common sense at all times in answering this. Remember that short-term goals are less than 6 months and long-term goals are over 6 months. What type of sources of support could you give them? It is very important when answering this question, because it says a source of support and how can it help them. If you only list the source of support, you will not get the full marks. You need to think about how they could help them. So like a dietitian could give them a food plan to work with, so they could record, or get them to write a food diary where they write down what they're eating, and then could help them devise a food plan for future weeks. And a dietitian is a formal form of support. But you could equally have a family member, like perhaps one that they've discussed in the vocational scenario. And you could say perhaps his brother could come with him on walks and make him accountable, and perhaps they could complete an exercise diary together. Whichever way it is, you must say how they can help. So like I've just mentioned before, the type of support that you must talk about in this question has got to be appropriate to the situation. If you've got someone that has, say for example, is underweight, you're not going to send them to Weight Watchers. That's not appropriate. You need to think about who could be there to help them. Remember, formal people are people that are trained and qualified in a job, and informal support are friends and family. For some answers, you could use both. So we move to the harder questions, as I like to think they are. There, you've got the first 10 marker, question 5, and it asks you how your plan takes into account the individual's needs, wishes and circumstances. So you need to really break this down into 3, and each time you are repeating yourself. So you need to think about the needs of your individual. So the needs of one individual is that perhaps you have in front of all is that they could need to lose weight. They're obese and they need to lose weight. You could have a look at their wishes or things that they like doing in the past, and you might say, oh, hang on, this person really likes dancing. So they could join a dance class to help them to lose weight. So it could be one of their wishes, perhaps to learn how to dance, or perhaps to take up a hobby that they once had. And then you need to think about their circumstances. Right, they don't have much money. So perhaps they could do a dance video instead at home, which won't cost as much as going weekly. or perhaps they're part-time and they've got lots of time to go and join a dance class. Try to think about their actual circumstances. Have they got money? Have they got time? How are they going to fit it around their life? And you do this 3 times, looking at recommended action 1, recommended action 2 that you've given them, and recommended action 3 that you've given them. So you must go back to the recommended actions before, and all you are doing is justifying why you have given those recommended actions. Why did you say this person needs to lose weight? Why did you say this person needs more energy? Why did you say that this person needs to quit smoking? You are justifying, you are backing up everything that you have given in the questions before here and justifying it. So again, looking at question 5, the same one that's asking you to justify why you designed your plan the way you did. Look at the information you've been given throughout your exam. Why did you choose the recommendations? What was your purpose? Have you considered the individual circumstances? And you need to back up what you say. That is just a repeat of what I've just said before. It's so important that you remember this for question 5. It is a long question. We move on to the last question of the paper, and this is: describe possible obstacles Damien may experience when trying to follow your health and well-being improvement plan, and suggest how these could be reduced or overcome. So you need to go back, have a look at what you've highlighted positive and negative, and you need to think about what could prevent him from achieving the goals and the recommendations that you have given him. For example, it could say that he lacks motivation. And lacking motivation could cause him to not achieve his goals. And therefore, you could put an obstacle is that he has highlighted he lacks motivation. However, to help him overcome this, I have suggested that he takes a friend out with him to do the walking so they can do it together, and it's less stressful and more fun. And that could help him overcome the motivation that he needs. Another one could be that he's got a lack of money. So going for a walk is free. That doesn't cost anything to go for a walk, and you can do it in any shoes as long as they're comfortable. So you could sort of state an obstacles could be that he has got lack of money. However, walks are free, and therefore I've suggested walks so that he won't have to pay out more to try to lose weight in his fitness journey. So you need to go back, visit the first part of your exam where you've highlighted the negative factors. Then you need to look at section B and what he does and doesn't want to do. By the actual question, list at least 4 things that could cause an obstacle to your individual achieving or following your plan. Go back, look at the revision guides. What are the most common obstacles? It'd be things like lack of time, lack of money. It could be motivation, disability. These can all impact on you achieving goals. Or where you live, geographical barrier. Perhaps you live too far away from a sports centre. So try to consider all the things that could affect your individual and pick 4 using the evidence that you've got previously too. Now you've made a list for the last question of the list of 4 things that could cause you your individual an obstacle or a barrier, both the same thing, something prevents them from achieving their goal. You've got to name what you think it is, describe how the barrier will affect the case study and how they can overcome it. And you do that 4 times on your work with a different barrier. And that, as long as you name the barrier, describe how it will affect the case study and explain how they overcome it, will get you the most marks. But you must follow that process 4 times.